The rain started quietly at first, just a soft tapping on the roof like the house itself was waking up. But within an hour, the soft tapping turned into a heavy drumming that made the small windows rattle. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls, and the family inside huddled together in the tiny living room. The father sat near the stove trying to keep a small fire burning, while the mother wrapped their youngest child in a worn blanket. The older children sat close, shivering from the cold and the fear that the storm seemed to bring with it. The house was modest, built of wood and patched many times over the years. It was not much, but it was all they had, and despite its fragility, it had always been a place of warmth and love. The family had learned to live with little, finding joy in small things. A shared meal, a story before bed, or even just laughter in the evening could make the day feel bright. But tonight, the storm seemed almost alive, a force that made their little home feel as if it might not survive. As the rain poured harder, the father went to check the doors and windows again, making sure they were closed. It was then that he heard it, a faint knocking barely audible over the storm. At first he thought he must be imagining it. Who would be outside in such weather? But the knocking came again, more urgent this time. The father signaled to his wife, and she quietly went to the door with one of the children in her arms. When they opened the door, a man was standing there, drenched from head to toe. His clothes were soaked, sticking to his body, and his shoes were muddy. His face was pale and his eyes looked tired and worried. He was tall and appeared to be of a different world than the family who lived in the small house. Despite the storm, there was something calm about him, a quiet dignity that seemed to glow even in the rain. The mother immediately called him inside. She wrapped him in a dry blanket and handed him a cup of hot tea, the warmth from the liquid bringing a little color back to his face. He accepted it with a gentle smile, his lips trembling slightly either from the cold or exhaustion. The children watched him quietly, curiosity mixing with caution. They had never seen a stranger like him before, someone who seemed so out of place yet so human at the same time. The man thanked them, his voice soft but filled with gratitude.
He explained that he had been traveling and had gotten caught in the storm.
He had tried to find shelter elsewhere, but the roads were flooded and impassable. By some chance, he had come across their house. He did not reveal much more, only that he needed a place to stay until the storm passed. The family did not question him. In their lives, kindness was a choice they made often, because they knew what it felt like to be without help. They offered him food, even though they had just enough for themselves. The father cooked a simple meal over the small stove, rice with vegetables and a little soup. The mother set the table with care, making the stranger feel welcome. The children helped where they could, bringing water and helping serve the food. As they ate together, a quiet conversation began. The man was polite, listening more than he spoke, but when he did speak, it was with thoughtfulness. He asked about their lives, about the children and their dreams. He did not pry into their struggles, but his interest made the family feel seen in a way they rarely experienced. For a few hours, the storm outside seemed to fade away, replaced by the warmth of shared human connection. After the meal, the mother showed him a corner of the living room where he could rest. She set out an old blanket and a pillow, making a small bed on the floor. The man refused at first, feeling that he was imposing too much, but they insisted. In their hearts, it felt wrong to turn anyone away, especially someone in need. He finally agreed, lying down quietly and closing his eyes, the blanket wrapped tightly around him. The storm continued outside, but inside, the atmosphere was different. The family sat together, talking softly in whispers, sharing stories about their day and past experiences. The children giggled at small jokes, their laughter a fragile shield against the harshness of the night. The man listened, occasionally smiling, his presence adding a sense of comfort and safety even though he was a stranger. As the hours passed, the storm's intensity did not diminish. The rain hit the roof with relentless force and the wind seemed to push against the walls. Yet inside, the family's home felt like a sanctuary, a place where kindness could exist even in the midst of chaos. The father checked the fire often, making sure it stayed alive, while the mother ensured the children were warm and dry. The stranger, for his part, did not ask for much. He accepted the food and the blanket, but never demanded more. He listened and engaged politely, showing gratitude in small ways, a nod, a gentle smile, a word of thanks. It was clear he was not just seeking shelter, but also showing respect for the family's generosity. By midnight, the storm had reached its peak. Thunder shook the walls and lightning illuminated the room in brief flashes. The children were scared, but they felt safe with their parents close by and the stranger resting nearby. In these moments, the family realized the true power of compassion. Their small act of opening the door, of offering help without expecting anything in return, had created a bond that felt unbreakable, even in the face of the storm. The father looked at the man and felt a quiet admiration. Despite the stranger's appearance and unknown background, he carried himself with a humility and patience that spoke volumes. It reminded the family that people were more than what they seemed on the surface, and that kindness could cross the boundaries of social status or wealth. As the night wore on, the storm began to weaken, though the rain continued to fall. The family settled down for a few hours of sleep, keeping a watchful eye on the stranger who was now quietly resting. There was a sense of peace in the home, a feeling that despite the chaos outside, they had done the right thing. They had chosen compassion over fear, generosity over caution, and in doing so, they had created a memory that would stay with them forever. The first part of the night passed with a strange blend of fear and comfort. The storm reminded them of life's unpredictability, but the act of helping someone in need reminded them of its beauty. The stranger, once an unknown presence at their doorstep, had become part of their small world, even if only for a night. And though none of them knew what the morning would bring, they understood that sometimes the simplest gestures could have the deepest impact. By the early hours of the morning, the storm slowed to a gentle drizzle. The first light of dawn seeped through the windows, casting a soft glow over the room. The stranger stirred, waking to the sight of a family who had welcomed him as one of their own. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed distant, as if the storm had not just tested them but also brought them together in a way nothing else could. The father rose quietly and started preparing a small breakfast, while the mother tidied up the room. The children helped where they could, careful not to wake the stranger fully. As he sat up and rubbed his eyes, he saw the effort and care of a family who had nothing yet gave everything they could. His heart swelled with gratitude, and though he remained modest and humble, he knew he had experienced something extraordinary. In that small, humble home amidst the aftermath of a night-long storm, a connection was made. It was a connection born out of necessity, but solidified through genuine human kindness. The family had offered shelter, warmth, and understanding, and in return they had received a quiet lesson in humility and gratitude. They did not yet know the full story of the stranger, nor did they anticipate the change he would bring into their lives. But in that moment, under the soft morning light, they felt the strength of humanity, the power of reaching out, even when there was nothing to gain, and the beauty of touching a life through simple, heartfelt generosity. The morning sun crept through the thin curtains, casting warm rays across the small living room. The storm from the night before had left puddles outside, but inside the atmosphere was calm and peaceful. The stranger who had spent the night on the makeshift bed stirred quietly, careful not to wake anyone. When he finally opened his eyes, he noticed the family moving around with gentle purpose, the mother preparing a simple breakfast, the father arranging a few dishes, and the children tidying the room with small, careful steps. Despite the exhaustion from the previous night, the stranger felt a sense of comfort he had not known in a long time. The house was modest, the furniture simple, but the warmth of the people inside made it feel more like a home than many grand houses he had stayed in before. He had expected discomfort and inconvenience, but instead he found care, patience, and genuine interest in his well-being. The mother noticed he was awake and offered him a warm smile. She invited him to sit and eat with them. The stranger hesitated for a moment, feeling awkward as a guest, but he saw the sincerity in her eyes and nodded. He joined them at the table, taking a piece of bread and a cup of tea. The children watched him closely, shy but curious, their eyes wide with wonder at someone so different from themselves. He smiled gently at them and they slowly relaxed, feeling the kindness in his presence. As they ate, small conversations began. The father asked the stranger where he had been traveling and if he had found his way through the storm safely. And answered simply, without giving too many details about his life, speaking instead about how unpredictable the weather had been and how grateful he was for their help. His voice carried warmth and calmness, and though the family knew little about him, they felt they could trust him. The children asked questions too, timid at first, But encouraged by their parents, they learned that he had traveled far and had faced many challenges along the way. After breakfast, the family suggested that he dry his clothes a little more and rest. The stranger moved carefully, not wanting to impose, but they insisted, showing that generosity could sometimes be gentle, yet firm. While he rested, the father decided to do a few household chores and the mother shared a story about the day's plans. The children ran errands and helped where they could, sometimes giggling when a small mishap occurred. Even in their modest home, laughter found its way into the corners, mingling with the smell of warm food and the soft light from the windows. Later in the morning, the stranger offered to help the father with small repairs around the house. Though the father had never seen him before, he accepted the offer, feeling it would be nice to have an extra hand. Together, they fixed a loose window latch and cleaned the small garden patch outside. The man worked quietly but efficiently, his presence almost calming. The children followed them outside at times, curious to watch the tools and movements, learning from the stranger's patience and careful attention to detail. Throughout the day, the stranger showed respect for the family's routines, never interrupting or imposing his own ways. He asked thoughtful questions about their lives, their hopes, and their struggles. The mother found herself talking openly, telling him about how she had to manage the household with limited resources, how every day was a challenge to ensure her children were fed and cared for. The father spoke about his work and the small dreams he held for the future, wishing to give his family a life that was stable and secure. The stranger listened, nodding with understanding, never judging, only showing genuine concern and empathy. The children, initially shy, began to warm up to him. They shared small stories about school and friends, their laughter echoing in the small living room. The stranger would occasionally play small games with them, helping with counting exercises or simple puzzles. He never acted superior. Instead, he joined them in their world, showing respect for their experiences and making them feel valued. It was clear that his presence was not just about needing shelter, but about connecting with people on a human level. By afternoon, the stranger had become more comfortable, and the family began to see subtle signs of his true self. His movements were deliberate, his speech polite and educated, and his attention to detail in everything he did showed a level of refinement the family had not expected. Yet, despite this, he never boasted or acted arrogantly. There was a quiet humility about him, an understanding that his presence in their home was a gift, just as their kindness was a gift to him. The day continued with small routines. The mother prepared a simple lunch, and the father repaired an old chair. The stranger assisted in small ways, offering suggestions when asked and helping quietly. The children occasionally interrupted with questions or stories, and each time he responded with patience and warmth, never showing impatience. It became clear that his visit was more than just a shelter from the storm. It was a meeting of hearts and minds where differences in wealth or background did not matter, only kindness and understanding did. As evening approached, the stranger helped set the table for dinner. The sky outside was a gentle orange, the storm now a memory replaced by calm winds and soft light. They ate together, sharing stories and laughter. The family felt a sense of pride in being able to help someone in need, and the stranger felt a sense of belonging he had not experienced in a long time. For a few hours, the world seemed simpler, warmer, and more human than it had in years. After dinner, the family and the stranger sat together, listening to the sounds of the night. The children were sleepy but happy, and the parents felt content that they had done the right thing. The stranger shared a small story from his past, not revealing too much but enough to show that he had faced challenges and understood hardship. The family listened, nodding in empathy, and in that moment the distance between them seemed to disappear. They were no longer strangers and hosts but simply humans connecting with one another, sharing space, warmth, and understanding. Before bedtime, the stranger helped the children prepare for sleep, showing small gestures of care that spoke louder than words. He tucked the youngest in with a gentle smile and offered soft words of encouragement to the older ones. The parents watched, feeling a quiet admiration for someone who could show such kindness despite being a stranger. They realized that the world was full of surprises, that people could be more than they appeared, and that even in the hardest times, generosity could shine brightly. As night fell again, the stranger prepared for sleep. Grateful for the family who had welcomed him so openly, the family felt a growing connection with him, a sense that this brief encounter might leave a lasting mark on all their lives. The storm had brought him to their doorstep, but it was their kindness, their openness, and their willingness to see beyond appearances that created a bond neither time nor distance could easily erase. Throughout the night, the stranger reflected on the family's life. He noticed the small sacrifices they made daily, the way they cared for each other, and the strength they carried despite limited resources. He realized that true wealth was not in possessions or status, but in the love, respect, and kindness shared among people. For the family, he silently vowed to honor their generosity in some meaningful way, though he knew the opportunity would reveal itself in time. By the early hours of the next morning, there was a quiet peace in the house. The storm had passed completely, leaving only the gentle sound of dripping water and the soft rustle of leaves outside. Inside, the family and the stranger had become part of each other's lives, if only for a moment. There was no rush, no expectations, only the simple understanding that their meeting had changed something subtle but significant in each heart. They had seen the best in each other, and in doing so had found hope, connection, and the quiet strength of human kindness. In that small home, amidst simple routines and modest surroundings, the stranger had become more than a guest. He had become a witness to the family's courage, resilience, and generosity. And the family, in turn, had seen a reflection of what kindness could bring into the world, a gentle reminder that even strangers could touch lives profoundly. The day ended with a calm, gentle embrace of the ordinary moments that made life extraordinary, and a sense that tomorrow might bring new possibilities, unknown but hopeful for all of them. The morning sun was soft and warm, spilling through the small windows of the modest house. The stranger, who had now stayed with the family for more than a day, sat quietly by the kitchen table, sipping tea. He watched the family as they went about their routines, quietly helping wherever he could, yet always careful not to overstep. There was a calmness about the house that made even him feel at peace, a contrast to the fast-paced, demanding life he had left behind outside the storm. The children were excited that morning, rushing about and laughing as they got ready for school. The stranger noticed how close they were with each other, how they shared everything despite their simple life. The mother prepared a small breakfast, talking softly to keep the mood light. The father was already thinking about the work that awaited him later in the day, but paused to smile at the stranger as he set out dishes. After breakfast, the stranger decided to take a walk outside. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind fresh, clean air and small puddles reflecting the sunlight. As he stepped out, the father joined him, curious about his background but not wanting to ask too many questions. They walked quietly, the stranger pointing out the beauty of simple things, the way the sun glinted off the wet leaves, the sound of a bird singing after the rain, the small flowers that had bloomed overnight. It was during this walk that the stranger began to open up slightly. He spoke of his travels, not mentioning his wealth or status, but instead focusing on the experiences he had gained and the people he had met. He talked about the lessons he had learned from seeing different ways of life, about how kindness and understanding mattered more than money or power. The father listened, intrigued by the depth of his thoughts and the simplicity with which he spoke about complex matters. The children, curious as always, followed them closely, asking questions about the world outside their small village. The stranger answered them patiently, explaining things in a way they could understand. He encouraged their curiosity, showing that learning was a lifelong journey. The family began to see a different side of him, a side that was thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in the lives of others, not just in passing politeness, but in deep, meaningful care. Back in the house, the mother spoke with the stranger about the small challenges she faced daily. She told him about the difficulty of managing the household with limited resources, the sacrifices she had to make to feed the children, and the constant worry about the future. The stranger listened, nodding with empathy, never interrupting, never judging. When she finished, he offered quiet words of encouragement, reminding her of her strength and resilience. The mother felt a sense of relief, a lightness she had not felt in a long time, as though sharing her burdens had made them a little easier to carry. As the day went on, the family and the stranger spent time together in different ways. They repaired small things around the house, cleaned the yard, and even worked on a little garden patch. The stranger's presence was always gentle and respectful, offering help only when asked, and never making the family feel inadequate. He joined in their routines not as a guest to be waited on, but as a person who wanted to be part of their lives, even if only for a short while. In the afternoon, a visitor arrived in the village, a neighbor who had seen the stranger outside the house during the storm. The neighbor was curious about him and came to speak briefly. The stranger remained polite, answering questions but not revealing too much. The neighbor left, impressed by the stranger's demeanor and humility, but still unaware of who he truly was. The family watched, noticing how the stranger interacted with others, his kindness consistent regardless of who he was speaking to. As evening approached, the stranger gathered the family together. There was a seriousness in his expression that made the parents sit up straighter, though there was no fear, only curiosity. He took a deep breath and began to speak, slowly revealing a truth that had remained hidden until now. He told them that he was not just a traveler, but someone who had lived a life of wealth and privilege. He had chosen to travel incognito to see the world from a different perspective, to understand the lives of ordinary people, and to learn about kindness in its purest form. The family listened in disbelief. They had treated him with warmth and generosity without knowing his background, without knowing that he had everything they could only dream of. The children were wide-eyed, unsure of how to process this revelation. The parents felt a mixture of surprise, awe, and pride. They had acted from the heart, not from expectation, and now they saw that their kindness had reached someone who could have walked away without understanding or gratitude. The stranger continued, explaining that it was not wealth or power that mattered to him in that moment, but the simple act of being welcomed into a home with warmth and openness. He told them that he had seen many people during his travels, but their genuine care and selflessness had left a lasting impression on him. He shared that he had chosen their home not because it was grand or convenient, but because he sensed a purity of heart, a sincerity that was rare in the world he usually inhabited. The parents were quiet, absorbing his words. They realized that their small gestures, offering food, a blanket, a place to rest, had made a real difference in someone's life. They had not acted to gain favor or recognition, but simply because it felt right. The children, still young and impressionable, began to understand that being good to others was a reward in itself, even if it came without acknowledgement or reward. For the stranger, this moment was transformative as well. He had come seeking shelter from the storm, but he had found something more, an understanding of what it meant to connect with people on a human level. He had learned that humility, kindness, and generosity could exist even in the most modest settings, and that these qualities could leave a deeper impact than wealth or status ever could. His life, full of riches and power, suddenly felt incomplete without these connections, without the sense of belonging that the family had shown him. The evening passed with quiet reflection. They shared a simple meal together, the stranger now more comfortable, speaking freely and laughing softly with the children. They listened to his stories, learning about the world beyond their village, yet feeling a closeness that transcended social status or wealth. It was a rare and precious moment, one that left all of them with a sense of wonder and gratitude. Before bedtime, the stranger walked around the small house, taking in the simplicity and care that went into every corner. He noticed the small personal touches, the love evident in every object, and the effort the family made to create warmth and comfort despite their limited means. He felt a profound respect for them, knowing that wealth could never replace the qualities they had: the resilience, compassion, and courage to live with dignity and kindness. That night, as the family slept, the stranger sat quietly by the window, reflecting on the events of the day. He understood that their lives were hard, that each day was a challenge, yet their hearts were full. He realized that true value lay not in possessions but in the connections and love shared between people. He made a silent promise to himself that he would honor their generosity in a meaningful way, though he did not yet know how. The impact they had on him was profound, and he knew that he would carry the memory of their kindness forever. As dawn approached, the stranger finally lay down to rest, feeling a sense of peace he had not experienced in years. The family, unaware of the depth of his reflection, went about their morning routines, still offering small gestures of care and kindness. The children laughed and played, the parents exchanged quiet smiles, and the house hummed with a gentle sense of life and love. The bond that had formed over the storm and the following day was strong, built on mutual respect, compassion, and the simple act of being human with one another. In that small home, amidst modest furniture and simple routines, a profound truth became clear. Kindness matters more than wealth. Generosity more than privilege, and human connection more than any possession. The stranger had come seeking shelter from a storm, but he had found a lesson in life, a glimpse of a world where people cared for one another without expectation. And the family, in their simple, genuine way, had shown him that even in hardship, hearts could remain open, and the power of empathy could create a lasting impact. The day ended quietly, with the promise of new understanding and the anticipation of what the future might hold for all of them. The morning light poured gently through the windows, casting a warm glow across the small living room. The family awoke with their usual routines, unaware that today would bring a new chapter in their lives. The stranger, who had stayed with them for several days, joined them at the breakfast table with a calm smile. His presence had grown familiar, comforting even, and the family no longer saw him as just a guest, but as a part of their daily life. After breakfast, the stranger asked if he could speak with the parents alone. The children were busy with their small chores, and the parents led him to a quiet corner of the house. There he spoke softly, explaining that he wanted to do something to help them in a meaningful way. The parents listened intently, unsure what to expect, yet curious about his words. He explained that he had the means to offer them more than just temporary support. He wanted to give them an opportunity that could change their lives for the better. The stranger proposed that he help the family start a small business. He did not want to simply give them money without purpose. Instead, he suggested a plan where they could use their skills, work hard, and build something sustainable that would provide for them long into the future. The parents were taken aback. They had never imagined such an offer, and the idea seemed almost too good to be true. Their hearts raced with a mix of hope and disbelief. He spoke about the possibilities in detail. They could start a small shop selling local produce, or perhaps create handmade crafts for sale in the town. He offered guidance, connections, and financial support, but insisted that the family would be the ones to make the decisions and do the work. The plan was not about charity. It was about empowerment. He wanted them to have a chance to build something lasting, a future they could be proud of. The parents exchanged glances, overwhelmed by the generosity of someone they had welcomed into their home without knowing his background. The mother's eyes filled with tears, realizing that their simple act of kindness during the storm had led to this extraordinary opportunity. The father's hands trembled slightly as he shook the stranger's hand, a silent agreement forming between them. For the first time in many years, they felt a flicker of hope that life could be different, brighter, and more secure for their children. The stranger then suggested that he could help with their home as well. He had noticed the wear and tear, the small repairs that were beyond their means, and he offered to have them fixed. He emphasized that these changes were not just about comfort, but also about creating a stable environment where the family could thrive. The parents nodded, grateful, yet still feeling a sense of disbelief at the scale of his generosity. They could know. I'd imagine how life had turned so unexpectedly in a single day. As the day progressed, the stranger worked alongside the father to make small improvements to the house. They repaired broken furniture, patched up leaks, and cleaned the garden. The children helped where they could, learning from the stranger's careful instructions and observing how he approached every task with patience and respect. The mother prepared meals and organized the house, her heart light with the knowledge that their lives were beginning to change in ways they had never dared to imagine. Throughout the day, the stranger remained humble and considerate. He never made them feel inferior or indebted. Instead, he encouraged them, reminding them that their hard work and perseverance had brought them to this moment. He explained that his support was not meant to overshadow their efforts, but to amplify what they could already achieve with dedication and unity. His words were gentle yet powerful, inspiring a sense of confidence the parents had not felt in years. In the evening, the stranger invited the family to sit together. He talked about the importance of education for the children, offering to help with school supplies and future learning opportunities. The children listened with excitement, their imaginations ignited by the thought of attending school without worry. The mother smiled, knowing that the foundation of their children's future was being laid in these small, deliberate steps. The father felt a sense of pride, realizing that their perseverance and kindness had brought them not just survival, but a pathway to growth. Later, the stranger took a moment to speak with the children privately. He encouraged them to dream big, to believe in themselves, and to understand the value of hard work. He told them that life would not always be easy, but kindness, honesty, and persistence would carry them far. The children absorbed his words, feeling inspired and cared for in a way they had never experienced before. They returned to their parents, faces bright with hope and determination, eager to share their excitement. The family gathered for a quiet dinner, reflecting on the events of the day. The mother looked at the stranger with gratitude, her voice trembling slightly as she thanked him for believing in them. The father nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced by the lightness of newfound possibilities. The children chatted eagerly about the plans for the future, unaware of how significant their laughter and energy were to the stranger. As night fell, the stranger helped the family prepare for bed, offering small words of encouragement and support. The children settled into their beds, dreams filled with hope and adventure, while the parents felt a deep sense of relief and happiness. They had faced hardships for so long, yet in a single week their lives had begun to transform. The stranger's presence had opened doors they had never imagined, not just through wealth but through understanding, respect, and genuine care. Before going to sleep himself, the stranger reflected on the family's resilience and warmth. He realized that his life, which had been filled with material success, had gained new meaning through this experience. Their generosity, despite having so little, had taught him lessons he could never have learned in a boardroom or a mansion. It was their humanity, their willingness to see and support one another, that had created a bond stronger than any contract or financial transaction. The night passed quietly, with a sense of calm and security filling the house. The family slept soundly, comforted by the knowledge that they were not alone and that their actions had touched someone in a profound way. The stranger rested nearby, knowing that he had played a small part in guiding them toward a brighter future, yet feeling that he had gained far more from their kindness than he could ever give in return. The next morning, the stranger proposed taking them to the town to begin planning the business. The parents were nervous but excited, understanding that this step could shape the rest of their lives. The stranger reassured them, emphasizing that success would come from their efforts, their decisions, and their unity as a family. He would provide guidance and support, but the journey belonged to them. The family felt empowered, ready to face challenges with courage and determination. As they walked toward the town, the children skipping ahead, the parents holding hands tightly, and the stranger walking beside them, there was a sense of shared purpose. The storm had brought them together, but it was their kindness, their courage, and their willingness to embrace the unknown that had set this path in motion. The future was uncertain but filled with hope, promise, and the knowledge that they were capable of more than they had ever believed. In the small moments, the laughter of the children, the gentle guidance of the stranger, the quiet smiles of the parents, a profound change was taking place. The family was no longer just surviving. They were beginning to thrive. They had experienced the transformative power of generosity, not just in material terms but in emotional and human connection. They understood now that life could be different, brighter, and full of opportunity if one had courage, faith, and kindness in abundance. The day ended with a sense of quiet triumph. The stranger had shown them the path, but it was their willingness to act, their willingness to trust, and their unwavering kindness that had made this moment possible. As they returned home that evening, their hearts were light, and their minds filled with plans and dreams. They had learned that sometimes, a single act of compassion could create ripples far beyond what one could imagine, changing lives in ways that would last for generations. And in their hearts they carried gratitude, hope, and the belief that the world could be kind and full of possibility, even in the most unexpected ways. The sun rose softly over the village, casting golden light across the small home that had seen so much in the past few days. The family woke with a sense of anticipation and excitement. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives, one they had only dreamed of in quiet moments. The stranger who had become part of their lives was already awake, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, sipping tea and watching the family prepare for the day. There was a calm sense of purpose in the air, a feeling that life was shifting in meaningful ways. After a simple breakfast, the stranger suggested they walk together into the town to begin putting their plans into action. The parents felt a mixture of nervousness and hope, knowing that this step could shape their future in ways they could hardly imagine. The children skipped ahead full of energy and excitement, their laughter echoing down the narrow paths of the village. The family felt a shared strength in their unity, a quiet confidence that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. In town, the stranger guided the parents through the process of setting up their small business. He introduced them to local vendors, explained basic procedures, and helped them understand the practical aspects of running a business. The parents listened attentively, eager to learn and determined to make the most of the opportunity. Their minds were full of ideas, their hearts full of hope, and their spirits lifted by the stranger's patient guidance. Every small step was a building block toward a more secure and fulfilling life. The children watched with curiosity, learning from the experience even at their young age. The stranger took moments to explain things to them as well, showing that education and awareness were important at every stage of life. He encouraged them to ask questions, to be curious, and to see the value in knowledge. The children absorbed his words eagerly, their eyes shining with wonder and excitement. For them, this was not just a lesson in business, but a lesson in life, in courage, and in the power of kindness. Back at home, the family began preparing their space for the new business. The stranger helped them organize and clean, offering practical tips and gentle encouragement. The parents worked diligently, motivated by the thought of creating a better life for their children. They knew the journey would not be easy, but for the first time they felt capable, prepared, and supported. Their home, once just a place of shelter, was now becoming a foundation for their dreams. The stranger's presence remained steady and calm, offering guidance without taking control. He encouraged the family to make decisions together, to trust their instincts, and to see the value in their own skills and ideas. He reminded them that success would come through persistence, effort, and unity, not through shortcuts or external help alone. The parents felt empowered by his trust, realizing that they had the ability to shape their own future, with his support serving as a bridge rather than a crutch. As days passed, the family settled into a rhythm. They worked on their business, cared for their home, and nurtured their children. The stranger continued to guide them, offering advice when needed, celebrating small victories, and helping them navigate obstacles. The family began to see tangible results from their efforts. Their small shop began to attract customers. Their products were appreciated for their quality and care, and they felt a growing sense of pride and accomplishment. The children flourished as well, attending school without the worries that had once burdened them. The stranger helped provide supplies and support for their education, emphasizing the importance of learning and curiosity. The parents watched with pride as their children embraced